And we're live. Hi, Rich. Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been a while. How are you?
Yeah. How's it going? I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, same. Just enjoying a summer in New York City.
Yeah. How is it? Is it nice?
It is extremely hot, and I just turned the AC off because otherwise you would hear it
right.
on the mic.
That makes
so,
sense.
like right now, it's okay. But
For another 30 minutes.
Give it 15 minutes, and you just see like rivers of sweat dripping down my face.
Oh no. Let's get into it then, so you don't have to sit there and melt. All right, so welcome everyone. This is the Dev Vlog. We haven't done one in quite a while now, so I'm happy that we're back on track doing this. I don't even remember what we were talking about last time. Probably something about Svelte 5. I'm sure stuff has changed, but you suggested we talk a bit about the state of JavaScript survey that came out. Anything in particular that you want to?
Well, it's like this nice historical record, right? Because it's the last state of JS in the Svelte 3.4 era. The next one, like assuming that we don't completely mess up our schedule, then by the time the next survey comes out and people start filling it in, Svelte 5 will be out. So it will be very interesting to see how sentiment changes, if at all, between now and next year's.
Yeah, definitely.
TLDR, like, great results for us once again.
Let's see if I can share the.
Yeah, everyone who contributes to this survey, like, really appreciate it, because Svelte put in a good showing. I guess the highlights are usage is going up and to the right.
Yeah.
Awareness is at 96%. Like, basically everyone who takes the survey at this point is familiar with Svelte. So we have, okay, we're basically mainstream at this point. We're no longer the hipster framework with we're one of the incumbents.
Yeah.
And if you, so you can see there that I think you're looking at the interest view there.
That might be correct. Let's see here.
Yeah. So the interest view, I'm not exactly sure how these numbers are calculated. Some of them, they're a little bit vague, but I'm
quite liking this one.
Consistently so usage is growing at a pretty steady clip. And interest,
awareness as well.
Svelte has been the most interesting framework for 5 years running. And there's a pretty sizable gap between us and the others, which is, like, for those of us who work on this thing day to day, it's really nice to see that we're not doing this for nothing. Like, people actually care about the end result. So this keeps us motivated to keep working on it. Retention is, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, how's the retention? Let's see.
It's good. So Solid is the framework with the highest retention right now, at 86%, and then we're at 84%, just below. And, like, bearing in mind the relative usage, I'm not mad about that result. Like, Solid is an incredible framework, and the people who use it absolutely love it. So if we were going to get beaten by anyone, Solid, congratulations. You did a fantastic job.
Actually, I haven't tried Solid yet. I mean, I have no reason to. So
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that, like, I think everyone should experiment with. It takes, like, a very different design philosophy than Svelte, but there's a lot of things that we're doing quite similarly, especially now with Svelte 5, that, like, we're adopting the same reactivity mechanism. But it's interesting, like, if you understand how the two frameworks work side by side, then you can sort of see the difference in design philosophy, and you can understand why some people are very much inclined towards using a framework like Solid. Other people are very much inclined towards using a framework like Svelte. Like, neither is, like, wrong. It's not a case of better or worse. It's just a case of, like, I get this, I don't get this, or I get this and I don't get that. So yeah, I mean, everyone should tinker with these other things for sure. And you're looking at the I think this is the positivity view.
Yep, that's right.
Where, I mean, a couple of things here.
Let's see here.
Second year in a running that we got 69% positivity. Nice. But also look at React. Like after all these years, and after people can complain about React so bitterly. Like there's so much talk about like the death of React, the demise of React, and yet it is still the framework with the highest positivity levels, in spite of being like the most widely, like it's an incredible achievement. It does 100%. Look like if we look at the trajectories, it looks like maybe Svelte will be the most popular framework next year. I don't really know what that means.
That could be fun.
But yeah, it could be fun.
I guess.
But,
I mean,
until then, like React is just.
It'll depend on like how Svelte 5 does, right?
I mean, yeah, that is true. That is true. And so if we cross over into the #1 spot, then we can attribute it to the Svelte 5 changes.
Yeah. Are there other things to see here from?
Yeah. So there's because there's so much data here, you can sort of filter it in various ways to make your thing look good. And I think in particular, if you order it by negative sentiment in ascending order, then click over to sentiment, get that sentiment, and then sort by negative on the right. Click that. Right. It looks the way that it's ordered, like the #1 most negative framework, but it's actually in a descending order, like whichever one is good for us. We are the framework with the lowest amount of negative sentiment, which is people who have used the framework and like don't want to use it again, or people who just aren't interested in it. So that it all points to the fact that, and like this all comes with a ton of caveats, right? Because the State of JS survey is famously not the most representative thing in the world. Like 96% of respondents are dudes, and like all of that is absolutely true.
Everyone on Twitter.
Oh yeah, it's yeah. So we can't take these numbers as gospel, but it all points to the fact that there is like a receptive audience for the work that's happening. So I'm just very, very curious to see what happens in future years.
So is there something to look at on the meta framework side?
There is. Yeah. So, again, usage is climbing steadily. Still like pretty small.
Pretty slow. Small, yeah.
Yeah, it seems that, I mean, obviously it goes without saying that the frameworks will have higher usage than the meta frameworks.
Of course.
That's just sort of par for the course. But it is interesting to see how these things are changing over time.
This is interesting. Like everything going down.
Exactly right. So whereas on the framework side, people seem like broadly happy, like things are getting better. On the meta framework side, it seems like there's a little bit of dissatisfaction. And it's not catastrophic, right? The SvelteKit retention is 88%, which is pretty high. Like only Astro beaters, they picked us to the top spot. Astro. So we're sort of neck and neck in terms of usage, and they're like just ahead of us in retention. And then like obviously
going up here as well. So this is Next.js,
so like clearly the Next is sort of in the process of laying the foundations for like their vision of what the framework's going to become, and it's caused like a lot of like churn and stuff, and so like there's a bit of a downswing for them, but it's true for every single framework that well, apart from Solid Start, because it's their first year in this view, but like look at Remix, for example, just like a steady decline in retention. And so clearly there's something missing, and
that's quite a steep.
It makes me think of like the recent conversations that have been happening in the JavaScript world about how Laravel and Rails are so much more equipped than the JavaScript centric full stack frameworks for building an entire app. And like, I don't think that we should overcorrect, because like you look at the Stack Overflow developer survey, which includes those alongside the JavaScript frameworks, and Rails and Laravel have way lower satisfaction rates than some of the frameworks here. But there's definitely some learnings that we could take away from there.
Yeah. I mean, I've been bugging you guys in the ambassador channel for ages to add auth and just transactional email stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want to build it myself. I understand why you maybe wouldn't want it built in, but
it's so hard. Like, where do you draw the boundaries with this stuff? How do you do it in such a way that, like, you have all of this stuff just ready to go and you can use it and it's documented and there's like a clear answer to the question, how do I, do auth? How do I do emails?
Yeah.
Without tying yourself to like 2024 era best practices and then just kind of missing out on
getting
on
stuck
the next
there
wave of innovation, or like making it impossible for people to adopt your thing because they're already on a different stack and so on. Super hard problem, but one that hopefully we'll be able to give a little bit more attention to once Svelte 5 is no longer eating up all of our time.
Right. So it's an interesting discussion to have. Like we saw the meta frameworks all losing like interest, right? So what do you think is the reason for that? Like, is there?
I mean, I think partly it's the usual story of usage is increasing and people are starting to build more ambitious things, and the honeymoon period is over for a lot of people who are using these things. Like, you build your first app with SvelteKit and it's pretty nice. Like, don't want to be too braggy, but like it's a pretty nice, it's a pretty nice framework to use. But then you start running into exactly the sort of things you talk about, like how do I, like, what is the way to do authentication? And we're like, wow, just left it.
Yeah, do whatever you want.
Draw the rest of the owl.
Yeah.
And as your usage of a thing becomes more ambitious, as you develop more of an understanding of the limitations of a framework, then inevitably your satisfaction is going to go down a little bit.
Yeah. I know I've pretty much only used SvelteKit as like fully as like either a backend and front end or as a backend for front end kind of thing. And recently I've been forced into using like the SPA mode, and there's a bunch of stuff there that I'd love to see, like things like actions. I know it's like it doesn't make sense in a way to have it on a client side only application, but just having the same API would be nice, because then you could just like once you can see a path to actually doing a BFF style application, then you can just like turn it on and it's just gonna almost work. Obviously there are going to be stuff you have to change, but stuff like that, you're kind of only getting 60% of the features, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Yeah,
would be cool. I once thought, like a while back, I was thinking it'd be nice to like if you could do an adapter that compiles to like a service worker and then just like handles all of the fetch and stuff in the service worker instead of. Does that make sense? Because so the server side would basically just run as a service worker in the client. I don't know how hard that would be. I'm sure there are also no dependencies and all this stuff that.
It's definitely something that has come up a lot. Like I've thought about it a lot. Like I think maybe we could provide more helpers inside the service worker module, so that it's, if you want to implement an offline first strategy or a network then cache or cache the network, all of these different strategies that people have with service workers. At the moment, you sort of have to do the low level plumbing yourself. It'd be great if that was just a thing, but it would also be great if we had a render API inside the service worker, and you could, inside your fetch handler, just call the same rendering logic that is going to happen on the server. And I think there's a path to doing that. It's just one of those things that, along with so many items on our SvelteKit wish list, are just going to have to wait until we get Svelte 5 done, unfortunately.
What do you, so just sticking to SvelteKit for a while here, for a bit more here. What's the number one feature that you think would be nice to have in SvelteKit that's missing at the moment?
Oh, the number one feature. How do I choose? There are so many. One thing that I've been thinking about lately is partial pre-rendering. It's a feature that Next has that we don't. Like at the moment in SvelteKit, pre-rendering is at the level of the page, right? And so you can't, for example, have a pre-rendered layout with a dynamic page, or a dynamic layout which contains, you know, your logged in state in the nav bar, and then a pre-rendered page. Like it would be great if you could actually just mix and match those. And the question is, like, obviously, how do you do that in a platform agnostic way? It's not totally straightforward, but like if we could design pre-rendering in such a way that works, then maybe we could also do like variants of a pre-rendered page. So you could have translations, or you could have A/B tests and things like that.
Right.
So that'd be nice. All of the stuff that we talked about, like with, you know, Auth and like storage APIs, having some sort of way that they're knitted into the framework, that would be lovely.
So basically adapters for storage APIs somehow.
Yeah. Like one thing I would really love to start experimenting with is using the environment API that is coming with V6 to start having high fidelity adapters at dev time, and maybe even starting to add some new adapter APIs so that we could, for example, have an Electron adapter where, you know, you're developing a SvelteKit app in a very idiomatic fashion, but it's using an Electron launcher.
Right.
And then pm builds your Electron app instead of you having to figure out how to stitch all of these things together yourself. Very long list, very long wish list.
Yeah. Just need to get Svelte 5 on.
Yeah, I mean, when we do get Svelte 5 out, then obviously one of the first orders of business is going to be figuring out how to take advantage of Svelte 5 within SvelteKit. Right now, if you build a SvelteKit app, you can use Svelte 5, but you're still using Svelte 4isms, like the page store is this sort of top level store, and all the properties are just like properties of a store. And so you don't get like granular invalidation of things. It would be lovely if, like,
that'd be nice,
could have a state-based alternative to those stores. Other things like of a similar nature, which we'll start to tackle once Svelte 5 comes out.
I mean, I have to ask, you know, when?
Kevin, you know better than to ask that question.
I know. I'm asking for the audience.
Here's what I can tell you. We put out the release candidate a little while back, as most of the people watching this probably know, and that came with a commitment that we don't expect there to be any real breaking API changes. There might be some API improvements that are non-breaking. For example, one thing that we haven't really talked about, but I hope will be popular, is a little tweak to how props are declared. I know that a lot of people get very frustrated with, you know, you have this destructuring assignment and then you have your interface alongside it if you're using TypeScript, which I mean, this is just how function arguments work in TypeScript, right? There's just no way around it. But it would be pretty cool if we could reduce a little bit of that duplication. So one thing that we want to do is, instead of forcing you to have a destructured declaration, just do let props interface equals $props.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And then unless you need to access REST props or you need to declare something as bindable, or you need to provide a default value.
Yep.
Like in those cases, obviously you need destructuring, but in a lot of cases you can do without that. And so, like, that's a change that we plan to make, which is obviously a change to the API, but it's not breaking. So those are the sorts of.
It's also like it rhymes well with how JavaScript works as well, right? Like that's just how you would do it in JavaScript. So
It is. I mean, it would be
Just
lovely
nice.
if you could declare your types and your default values and whatever, like in line in the destructuring assignment. But that's just not how TypeScript is designed.
Yep.
And so, like, all of the proposals that sort of like take it back to export let or whatever it is, like there are we've spent so long thinking about this, and there are reasons that we just can't do those things. So this feels like hopefully something that is a good compromise in the service of better ergonomics. But aside from that, most of the things that we're working on in Svelte right now are just bug fixes. We have, I mean, it's all obviously on GitHub. We have a milestone for the different types of bug. Like if something is something that we consider either a very important bug to fix or something that is going to be breaking if we fix it after 5.0, then that is in the 5.0 milestone. And so as a result, we have like a ready-made list of things that stand between us and a stable release. And that's all in the open. People can go and look at that. They can subscribe to that and they can get a sense of what is left for us to do. The other tranche of work is updating the site. So far we have, so we have svelte.dev, but then we also have kit.svelte.dev and we have learn.svelte.dev. And it's a bit silly, right? If you want to learn Svelte, then you have to go to a different website, and then that also includes SvelteKit. And then, like, if I finish Svelte, I'm left with the question: how do I build an app? Well, now we're going to send you over to this entirely separate website, and they all have their own search functionality and so on.
And it also, especially because, like, on the Svelte website, when you initiate a project, you're using SvelteKit. So
so like
from the start, you're like, what is this?
Exactly. We have these opinions about how to, like, the best and fastest and most efficient way to build a Svelte app, but that's not really expressed in how the websites all interrelate with each other. So with the Svelte 5 launch, we are planning to launch a new site. It's svelte.dev, and it's going to include all of that stuff. It's going to include the documentation for Svelte. It's going to include the documentation for SvelteKit. It's going to include the content of learn.svelte.dev, obviously updated to include all of the Svelte 5 stuff. And we're going to have a unified search across all of that. Maybe nice. a little spruce up in a few places. Remains to be seen exactly how different it'll be. But that is going to just make everyone's onboarding journey a lot easier. It's going to make it easier for people to find the answers to their questions, because they don't need to figure out if, like, am I supposed to be looking at the SvelteKit docs or the Svelte docs? And we'll also have then a place to put documentation for other stuff like Veep plugin Svelte, all of the various, like, SvelteKit adapters, other ancillary things. Like, they can all live
kind
on
of
this
missing from the documentation in general.
So we're going to have the project is called OmniSite, and that is what we're working on. So Simon and I are working away on that. Like, we're updating all of the documentation, which, kind of gives you a sense of where we are in the cycle of development. Like, we are working on one of the final things.
Too far away.
Not too far away. And Dominic is spending a lot of time on Svelte itself. So that is where the activity is happening right now.
Nice. So probably not too far away in terms of waiting for Svelte 5. That's nice. No promise of a date, though. I don't think we could do that. I mean, we just need to announce Svelte Summit fall. Then you can do some conference-driven development. So are there any questions for Rich while we have him here? While we're waiting for questions, I'm gonna go ahead and shield the new SvelteSociety website that we're working on, and this is not the final design, but it is pretty close. Like these are wireframes. Obviously, if you've been on the SvelteSociety website at the moment, it's a really old, not the best looking thing that you've seen. You can find packages and search for libraries and stuff. So basically what we want to do is we want to improve this let's see if I can widen this. I want to improve the experience of going to the SvelteSociety website. So basically, this is going to be the place where you should go to find information about Svelte, like Svelte tutorials, packages, videos. You'll be able to log in. You'll be able to save content that you want to watch later, stuff like that. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. It's not too advanced, but there are a bunch of stuff to build here. There's going to be like a job board as well. That's hopefully a bit more moderated than the jobs channel, in the probably higher quality as well. Hopefully, we'll see. And at some point, you'll be able to post like tutorials and stuff. Like every user will be able to post tutorials. Obviously, we'll need to moderate that, but I'm very much looking forward to getting this out there, because the old website is so bad. Like it's functional, but it's not a good website.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this too.
Yeah, it's because it's also like a good complement to the official Svelte website as well. You'll find events and stuff as well, so meetups, conferences, etc. All right, let's see here. Any questions? I'm relatively new to Svelte, so forgive the naive question here. Will the way I interact with SvelteKit's app/stores change upon the release of Svelte 5?
It will not. Stores will continue to work. Like pretty much everything in Svelte 4 will continue to work. And because SvelteKit isn't going to get any immediate changes because of Svelte 5, like that's going to be an after 5.0 thing that SvelteKit is going to start adding these new features. You'll just keep using things exactly the way you do. I think what we'll probably do is add a new app/state module or something of that nature. And we'll have versions of the existing app stores, but expressed as state. And they'll look exactly the same, but they'll use the new mechanism. And as a result, they'll be just a little bit more efficient. Yeah, and you won't have to put weird dollars in front of everything.
Right. All right, let's see here. Any more to tease about the successor to Actions?
The successor to Actions. Wow, I didn't realize that we've been so indiscreet that we had started talking about there being a successor to Actions.
Yeah, I had no idea either.
All right, so the background here is, one of the things that we absolutely got wrong with Svelte 3 and 4 was this idea that you have events coming from a component, and the idea was you should be able to treat a component as an element, almost like they should have a similar sort of API. And so if elements can dispatch events, then why can't a component? And so unlike other frameworks that got this right, we had props that go down and then events that go up. And what we should have done, instead of trying to make components like elements, we should have tried to make elements like components, right? You just pass in a callback. And so that's how Svelte 5 works. Like you pass your button an on-click callback, essentially. Yep. And components work the same way. So they're actually now a lot more interchangeable. However, we did not do that for actions and transitions, because like there isn't really a way to express that. But wouldn't it be nice if we had the same sort of level of programmatic control with actions and transitions and animations as we do with event handlers now? Yeah. And so long story short, like these things that I've described, like those directives, they have a lot in common, and it feels like there's an opportunity to unify them, make them more powerful, give you more programmatic access to the life cycle. And if we do that, then I think we'll be able to start closing out a lot of very old issues relating to, like, I want my transitions to be able to do this, which isn't supported in the current declarative approach. Similarly with actions. One cool thing about Svelte 5 is your actions run inside an effect, which means that if you have an action, you can just have an effect inside that, and you can do all of the, like, it's the same reactivity model as you have in components more broadly. So you can do that instead of returning an object with an update and a destroy method, which is how we do cleanup and updates in Svelte 3 and 4. That'll still work, but you can use $effect instead and have
just
things be a
return from that.
bit more consistent. But that's a far cry from the more comprehensive overhaul that we would like to one day introduce in a non-breaking way.
Yeah. So I guess one big advantage of like unifying them and making them so that they work in a different way is that you can actually pass them down as props and apply them as like, you could just spread them on an element rather than because now you have to basically define that there's transition. You can, I guess you can still pass down a transition, but it's just like becomes a headache because you have to do all these if else and all this other stuff.
Yes. So the component that is receiving the prop has to be aware that like there might be a transition or an action, and it has to be named a certain thing. The syntax is pretty weird. So a way that we could pass these things around without the child component needing to have a specific understanding of what is being passed to it will go a long way.
Yep. All right. Another question here. Any plans for SvelteKit to integrate internationalization?
I don't know that there's much that needs to happen at the framework level. Things like Paraglide exist, Paraglide and Lang, and they've actually been really great partners, like figuring out what the missing pieces are and opening PRs for them. So we recently introduced the reroute hook, for example, which which allows your server-side logic, right, can figure out what the language should be, and we can reroute to like if you have, I don't know, /pt/some root, then it'll be like, oh, we're supposed to be looking at the Portuguese translation, but without you needing to define that in your file system based routes. So those sorts of things, I think, give most of the flexibility that we need to implement internationalization in SvelteKit apps. If there are extension points that we need to add, then like we definitely want to make it easier for people. But so far, we've kind of been letting the inlang folks take the lead on that, because like they know this stuff inside out, and they're absolutely brilliant at it. So like we're just getting out of the way.
So, I mean, it basically means that you could probably do internationalization today, right?
Oh, you absolutely can. I mean, people are doing internationalization in their SvelteKit apps. It's just maybe not quite as idiomatic as it should be, and we don't like say on the SvelteKit documentation, this is how you do internationalization. And I think that would be a good thing to add.
Yep. All right. Let's see if there are any other questions here.
I saw one a while back from Jeppe Reinhold. As far as I know, V5 components are no longer self-contained but descend on the Svelte runtime. Is that correct? How does that impact the building and distribution of web component libraries built with Svelte? So it is correct that Svelte 5 components depend on a runtime, but it's also correct that Svelte 3 and 4 components depend on a runtime. There's always been a runtime there, because otherwise, like every time you need to create an element, you'd be doing document.create element. If you want to create an SVG element, you could document.create element NS, and then you've got to pass in this long string before you can create. Like, you don't want to have to repeat that a bunch of times throughout your app. So we've always had like this little library of helpers that Svelte pulls in to do that work, and it's this little tree shakeable library called Svelte/internal. In Svelte 5, there is Svelte/server/internal and Svelte/client/internal, and it's a different set of functions, but it's the same concept. The difference is that because Svelte 5 is a little bit smarter in a lot of ways, that runtime is slightly bigger. In return, your components themselves get much smaller. The compiler isn't trying to put all of the logic in the component
Right.
like compiled output, more of that logic is able to be shared between components. So in the typical case, your Svelte apps are going to get noticeably smaller. If you are doing something that is completely standalone and you want to bundle all of the dependencies, like if you have a single hello world component and you bundle all of its dependencies, it's going to be a little bit bigger. It's not going to be so much bigger.
No one builds one component applications though.
I mean, no one builds one component applications, but people do build one component
Embed
web
things,
components that are then distributed.
Fair enough.
So like there is going to be a little bit of a increase in size if that's what you're doing. I would suggest that in most cases, it's perhaps better to not bundle, so that if there are multiple of those inside a,
Right.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would just say try it, and you'll probably see that the increase in runtime size is small enough that it's really not going to matter in the vast majority of cases. And also, like, we're still working on getting rid of some of that. Like every couple of days, we'll find some code that we can shrink down a little bit. It's actually one of my favorite things to do is just delete.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of deleting, we had a thing at work where, so we were basically using handwriting types and everything from a backend, and then we generated an API client instead that just made all of the types and everything. I got to delete like 2,000 lines of code. So nice. Best feeling ever.
Yeah.
Just getting rid of code. The best code is deleted code.
It so is. Yeah, I mean, just this morning, Ben opened a PR on the Svelte repo that got rid of 2,000 lines of dependencies from our PNPM lock file. So
nice.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Although actually credit for most of that belongs to Bjorn, who is, a lot of people might know as Bluey, who opened a pull request on one of our dependencies, the change set CLI, which removed 155 dependencies from their repo, and so we're now the beneficiary of that.
Oh, that's great.
So like all of that stuff, like it mounts up. Although obviously that doesn't affect end users in any way.
Affects the learn.svelte.dev site though, right? The loading of it.
No, because the change set CLI isn't part of that.
Oh, I see. Oh, sorry. Yeah. That makes sense.
But yeah, we're just trying
does make sense.
Make everything as efficient as possible.
Yeah. So last question here. When will Rich release his next YouTube video? Because you do have a YouTube channel now, right?
I do. There's just not enough hours in the day. I definitely have like things that I would like videos that I would like to make. Exploring some of the tricks and techniques that we're using inside Svelte, I think could be interesting. Some of the libraries that we've built in order to use inside Svelte could be interesting for people. But I'm just so preoccupied with making the damn thing that I don't have time for that. But folks, if people have like specific things.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, would you rather have Rich build Svelte or make videos about Svelte? Because if he's making videos about Svelte, he can't build Svelte at the same time, right? That's the conundrum, I guess. But it's also, is it fun? Do you think it's fun to create the video? The video that you made, for example? Yeah. Well, then I'm sure you'll make more videos down the line.
Yeah.
All right. Unless there's another question here. I think. Oh, there's a question here about, are there any plans to make plus server files type safe, like page loaders?
I think there's actually I haven't been paying close attention to this, and I'm sorry for that, but I believe there's actually a pull request that makes some progress on this. So the context is that a plus server file exposes what are basically just HTTP endpoints, and fetch is not a type safe API. Like you fetch something from a URL, like you're not going to know what's in it. Like you have to coerce it. But since some of these endpoints are internal, and since if you're running the fetch on the server, like SvelteKit will actually replace that with a direct function call instead of like making an HTTP request to yourself, which would be silly.
You know, I just learned this. I had no idea that was a thing. That's awesome.
Yeah. You get all sorts of fun stuff. It would be nice if like we understood what the return value from your HTTP endpoint was and could provide type safety accordingly. I wouldn't say we have plans to do that, but that is definitely a nice to have thing. I think if you really want to go down that route, then you're probably better off not having HTTP in the way at all, and you probably want to have some kind of RPC mechanism,
right? Like TRPC or
like something. Yeah. So you know, there's a thing out there called Telefunc, which works with Vite, where you import a function from a sibling module, and you can call that function. If you call it on the server, then you're just calling the function. If you call it from the client, then it's making the request. So it sort of inverts that relationship. Instead of having a fetch request that gets replaced with a direct function call on the server, you have a direct function call that gets replaced with a fetch request in the client, right, which is like candidly probably a little bit a better model. Some of the frameworks have started to incorporate these sorts of things. Obviously, React has its server actions. Solid and Quick have, I think they just call them server functions. I'm very much of the opinion that you shouldn't have these in the same file that you're calling them. I think that's a recipe for confusion and like attack vectors. But if you can import the function from a sibling module and just call it that way, then like, of course you got type safety, because TypeScript doesn't know that there's a network boundary involved even. Doing that in such a way that you're not accidentally introducing a different kind of attack vector is obviously a thing that you need to figure out. But yeah, I think there's probably something we can do there one day.
Yeah, one day. All right. I think that's it. Thanks for joining me again for the devlog, Rich. Maybe we will do another one in July. Who knows?
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for joining us and for all the fun questions. And yeah, we will see you all next month, maybe.
All right. Bye everyone. Thanks for joining. See you.